In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, Krysten Peek is here again, and she is going to talk about her Tier 2 prospects for the 2025 NBA Draft. So stay tuned to find out which prospects Krysten believes are going to be in the Tier 2. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe. Yes, it is me. I had a couple people text me asking, was that really me? Because it didn't sound like me. And my voice is, I'd say, is probably at 60%. So I'm trying to get back to normal, I should say. And my co-host for today is Krysten Peek. We'll get into Krysten's background a little bit before we get into the show. But I want to let you know that this episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And I also wanted to mention that your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. Locked On newsletter covers your favorite Locked On teams. So whether you support the Lakers, Mavs, Bulls, Knicks, check it out at lockedondaily.com. And you can start your day with the all new and free Locked On fill in the blank team newsletter. Again, lockedondaily.com. And if you are not subscribed to the YouTube channel, I have no idea what's taking so long, but subscribe, like, share, comment, click the bell so you can be notified every time I drop an episode, because we are your daily source for NBA draft content, and we're coming at you 5 days per week. And like I mentioned, I guess this is my third time mentioning it, my co-host for today is none other than Krysten Peek. I forgot to mention in the last episode, I guess, Krysten's background. And I mentioned that I've seen her on the circuit for, man, I guess it's like almost 10 years now.
It's 10 years, yeah.
About 10 years. And so just let the audience know about your background covering the draft. And I know it may be a little difficult for you to toot your own horn, but let them know why you are an expert in this in this field.
I mean, I played Division II volleyball and basketball at a small school outside New York City. Always loved being around the game. Basketball, that was my love. Volleyball, I was just pretty good at too. And it didn't happen overnight. Rafael, you know this, being in this business, nothing ever happens overnight. So it took about 7 years, me being at Yahoo, working in news. I worked in Australia for 2 years, came back, covered MMA and boxing, covered Super Bowls and Olympics. And it wasn't until Yahoo Sports bought Rivals.com that I really entered into the basketball space. And while I was at Rivals, probably when I first met you, working with Eric Bossi, you know, our draft coverage was Gavoni and Schmitz. It was, there was a time when Shams and Woj worked together, and that was on the vertical with Yahoo. So once the band split up, they were like, we need someone to cover the draft. KP already know, Krysten, me. KP already knows all these prospects anyways. Would you have an interest in covering the draft space? And I said, of course. And here we are today.
Yeah, so you were working at Rivals when I first met you. And I just remember it was in, I think it was like Bishop Gorman Gym or something like that.
That's so crazy.
I was working with API, like I mentioned in the last episode, and we had all these top ranked guys, and we ended up losing to like a local team. And if I remember correctly, you were trying to get an interview, but it was like, I think it was like Terrence Ferguson or something like that. Maybe it was Billy Preston or Trayvon.
Oh, yeah. Like, if teams lose, I'm not getting that interview. I've already conceded to that. But back then I was still probably trying to talk to Billy or T Ferg, you know.
Yeah, it was, right. I just remember it was a disaster. We lost to a local Vegas team. I mean, we had so much coverage. I mean, I think Trayvon had his own diary on USA Today. It was a randomly new team put together. Under Armour threw a bunch of money behind it. And I was like supposed to document that season. And I ended up losing the footage because I think my external hard drive got confiscated at an airport in Paris. And I was in such a hurry that I ended up like forgetting some stuff that they had pulled out my bag, and it was all there. And I always said that if I did that documentary, it would be like it wouldn't be a good documentary. It would be like one of those, like, where are they now documentaries?
Right.
Because at that time, there was supposed to be like 4 lottery picks on that team, and it didn't happen that way. But anyway, let's talk about the 2025 draft. I know this draft is very, very important to you. We've talked about that off the record. And I feel like you know these prospects, not only just from like the scouting perspective, but you know a lot of them personally. Like, you know their parents, you have relationships with them. They send you Christmas cards. And so I wanted to hear your thoughts on your tier 2 prospects. But first, let us know who are the prospects you have in tier 1.
I mean, it's the big three. I really do think Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper have separated themselves. Ace Bailey is still coming into his game. And then Egor Demin from BYU is someone that I think I'm higher on than some other people. He did not shoot very well against Providence. But you know, it's not like there's not other parts about his game that NBA teams love, like 6'8", lead guard, great in the pick and roll, phenomenal passer. So that's why I'm putting him in my tier 1. It's funny, we were talking about tier 2 and you're like, where's Egor? And I was like, he's in my tier 1. And so for those 4 guys, I know we have all the time in the world until June to really dissect who they are and what their game and how it translates to the NBA. So on the tier 2, you know, and these are just freshmen. I really love the one and done class in this draft in particular. And so when we're looking at that tier 2, there's a couple players in there that I'm really surprised on. You're probably surprised on that they're playing so well early on. But these tiers and these draft boards are going to change and fluctuate for not only you and I, Rafael, but also NBA teams between now and June. So, I mean, there is going to be a chance that we're wrong on some of these guys. I guess I'm not allowed to be wrong on the internet in the history of the world, because I still hear from people about being wrong about someone. So, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of movement, I think, in this tier 2 in terms of ranking them and where they fall on draft boards between now and the draft in June.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to fluctuate. I always say it's fluid and things can change. And really what's weird is that you can have a hot 6-game stretch and ride that into the draft. I mean, I wasn't the biggest Johnny Furphy guy. I feel like he had 6 games last year. That's all he showed was 6 games. And he ended up riding.
Alex Sarr had 2 games against, you know, the G League Ignite, and he solidified himself as a top 5 prospect. Yeah.
He rode that wave all the way to the end. And then I started like asking myself, especially after seeing how bad the Ignite were, I was like, he really went from, I had him at number 30 on my big board 1.0, and I thought I was higher on him than the consensus. He went from 30 to number 1 on my board, and he played 2 really strong games against a team that was like 2-30.
Right.
Let's start with Tre Johnson, a guy that I'm familiar with. People that have been listening to the podcast have heard my story about watching Tre score 37 points against Cason Wallace and Rylan Griffin when he was like a sophomore. I mean, to me, he's just one of the best shot makers in this class.
Yeah.
Why are you high on Tre?
I'm high on Tre because I've been following him for a very long time from high school. And then even just seeing him this summer and how he worked on his body, he added 10 pounds of muscle mass. And then I went to a preseason practice where they had a lot of new players coming in, and there was a power struggle in the backcourt on offensive touches. And Tre, in his mind, he's like, I'm going to get my touches. I'm that dude. I can create my own shot. I can get a shot off from anywhere on the court. And so there was this power struggle with the older guards. Then I went back after the season started, and it was like night and day. Like, practices were much more fluid. There was a lot more synergy between Tre and his teammates. And I think that's just helping his case. Like, they've actually bought into the fact, like, okay, you are that dude. And if we want to win games, we got to get you touches throughout the entire game. So at one point he started the season, he was the leading scorer freshman in all of college basketball. That changed when Dylan Harper started to go off and he had those back-to-back 35, 36, 38 games, whatever it was. But he is still, I mean, you and I know, Rafael, like, he is a dude that is going to get 20 shots regardless if he's making them or not. And I think with his combination of size and shot creation and the fact that he has such a defensive mindset this season. I mean, I went down and interviewed him, and he said he wants to be more of a balanced two-way player. And so for him, he's focusing on the right things. The team is buying into him, and that's why I'm pretty high on Tre at that top second tier of this draft.
Yeah, I've always been a Tre Johnson fan. Funny story before we go to break. A friend of mine was like, "You remember Tre when he was younger?" And I used to like film like youth basketball games. I needed some money. I would film games. I ended up being like close with Mo Williams, and Mo has kids around that age. And then Jermaine O'Neal has a son that's a senior in high school. And they had teams of kids where they were like third and fourth graders. So someone tells me, go back and look at some of your old pictures and videos. Why do I have this picture of Tre, Dink Pate, Bronny James? It's somebody else. It's somebody else on that list, but they were all on the same team. It was like the Gulf Coast Blue Chips or something like that. And I think the team was half based out of Texas, half based out of Ohio. Is when Bron had first moved back to Cleveland from Miami. Then Mo was there. But it's crazy when I look at this picture and I see like these kids that I was just filming because I needed to make an extra couple bucks. And I'm talking about them and from NBA on NBA podcast. All right, up next, we're going to talk about VJ Edgecombe. I feel like VJ has, at least in my opinion, he's been up and down. He's had his best games against weaker opponents, and he struggled against the ranked opponents on Baylor's schedule. So I want to hear Krysten's thoughts on VJ Edgecombe. All right, before we get into the second segment, I want to talk about my favorite app when it comes to purchasing tickets, and that is the Game Time app. Game Time is not just for athletic or sporting events. It is for concerts, comedy, theaters, and more. What I love about the Game Time app is that they have all-in pricing. Toggle the feature on the app, and it will show you the total upfront with no surprise fees at the checkout. But also, I love the fact that you get a view of your seat. It is a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you'll know exactly your view and what you are going to see. I bought a ticket before another app, and it was an Atlanta Hawks game, and they have this seat that is behind a pillar, and I couldn't even see the game. So if I had the Game Time app, then I would not have wasted my money. And Game Time has the lowest price guarantee. If you find something cheaper, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms apply. Again, create an account. Use the redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. All right, we talked about Tre Johnson, and now let's talk about VJ Edgecombe. I had VJ at I can't remember, it was either number 4 or number 5 on my first big board that came out. I was extremely high on him based off the performance that he had representing Bahamas at the FIBA qualifiers or Olympic qualifiers. And then he got off to just absolutely brutal start. He's had some good games against some lesser opponents. I still have my concerns about VJ. What are your thoughts on VJ?
The thing with VJ is, I don't even think he realizes his full potential and how good he can be. This is someone I've never seen a player rise the high school ranks as quickly as VJ did. He came from the Bahamas, was playing in Florida. Then he transferred to Long Island Lutheran, was playing with Kai and Anthony, and they were on a national schedule. It was the Hoop Hall West, and he just exploded, was taking over the game. Obviously, he's got natural athleticism. He loves to play above the rim. He had a Sports Center highlight off a missed 3 in his last game where his head was over the rim. So the athleticism is there. I think teams are more worried about his 3-point jump shot. He's getting better at reading the pick and roll, but these Baylor guards, man, I don't know what it is. I feel like Keontae George, who now was a first-round pick to the Utah Jazz. He kind of disappeared a little bit at Baylor, but he's still very, very productive, in his first season and a half with the Jazz. And so I never, ever discredit Baylor guards, and especially ones that I think their game, and when you have better spacing and floor spacers in the NBA, he's going to be able to flourish. We saw that in the Bahamas game. Like, he was just playing free. So when you have a set offense and you're playing alongside other ball dominant guards like Jeremy Roach, I think there's some frustration there. He's also been dealing with a couple injuries. He was out with a hamstring injury, so he's coming back. So I'm not discrediting him at all, because I think the pro that VJ is going to be more of what we saw on the Bahamas national team and what he did this summer, as opposed to the struggles we're seeing early on at Baylor.
Yeah, and that's valid. I mean, I'm a big Keontae fan. I was very high on Keontae coming into the year, and then I ended up dropping him based off his performance at Baylor, which I still think was valid. He shot 38% from the floor. Maybe he was even 37% from the floor. And then I saw Keontae during pre-draft, and he looked slimmer. The athleticism that he showed in high school was back, and he had told me that he put on 20 pounds at Baylor. They were trying to bulk him up and get ready for the Big 12 play, because the Big 12 is a veteran conference. You don't have a lot of younger players. And so I do have to factor that in when I evaluate VJ. I thought the fit at Baylor wasn't the best anyway. I thought, like, for him, the best way to show his potential was to go to a situation where he is going to have the ball in his hands. He is getting, good assist numbers, but he's like playing the three in a sense. And they have 3 point guards that need the ball, from Roach, Nunn, and Robert Wright. So I just think the fit at Baylor is not the best to showcase his skill. But then at the same time, I'm going by what I'm seeing, and I'm not seeing the same person that I saw. And so he's a little bit lower for me on my current board. That's probably going to come out within the next few days. But like you said, I have to factor in that Keontae probably may have even looked worse than VJ did. And in a redraft, Keontae goes higher than where he went. So it's all about fit. And I wonder, if I don't know how far VJ is going to fall, if he does fall at all, but I wonder if other freshman guards are going to say, like, hey, if I go to Baylor, they're probably going to have 2 or 3 more point guards, and I'm not going to get the chance to have the keys, which is, again, while I think AJ's decision to go to BYU was genius. All right, let's talk about Asa Newell. You have Asa in your tier 2. So
I do.
You're higher on him than others.
We talk about Rafael, like what's important to NBA teams when you're looking at one and done prospects, and they seem to value youth, length, versatility, and upside. And I think Asa checks all those boxes. I mean, this is kind of like a revenge tour for him after being snubbed as a McDonald's All-American last year. That probably helped him, honestly, in the long run, because now he's coming into the season with a chip on his shoulder. He's producing at a high rate at Georgia. He went to a situation where he knew he was going to have the ball and he was going to get those opportunities. And I think, he has that budding 3-point shot. They're not utilizing him in the pick and pop as much, but he can make those threes. And so when you see what he's doing at Georgia and what he can be in that hybrid wing role in the NBA, I think off potential alone and just what his upside brings, he can definitely be there in the mix in the lottery.
Any concerns about the 3-point shooting? I thought that it was a skill set he was going to be able to show more this year than he showed at Montverde, but he's shooting 15% from 3. Any concerns?
Yeah, they're just no, because that's not the way they're utilizing him. They need him to play more in the post, and they're not using him in the pick and pop. Like, I don't think he's not shooting threes at a high rate and only making 15% of them. He's just not getting those shots. And so I don't have concerns about it. I've been to practice a couple times. I've seen the work ethic that he has before practice and after practice, and how he is very he's very focused. And anytime you see a player like that that's putting in the work, it's only a matter of time before things start coming to fruition on the court.
So I'm going to ask you a question. And you were there at the game. I remember speaking to you before the game, but it was at the Hoop Summit in Portland. And Newell looked like it was personal against common mollywops. Whether it was the little chicken wing elbows, you hoop, the little things you do to let someone know, like, you got your work cut out for you tonight. In your opinion, did that performance from Newell, which he outplayed Molly Welch, without a doubt, did that say more about Newell or more about Common for you?
I think when I talked to Asa, I talked to his parents, and going to Hoop Summit, that was a business trip. He wanted to make a strong statement in practices. He wanted to make a strong statement in the scrimmage before the game and also the game itself. And so I think he came out and he did that, and so when you look at somebody like it, sometimes you get these setbacks and it just like lights a fire under your ass. Like, it's only good moving forward. And I think it more says about the work ethic and what's that's doing for Asa. Cause come on. I mean, he looks like a completely different player at Duke than what we saw at Hoop Summit. He looked lost running around out there. So
But I think it was because of Asa. I think Asa set the tone, in my opinion. And I sat like right behind the hoop. So I got to see the stuff that wasn't on camera. In my opinion, Asa looked at it like, all right, I got snubbed from the McDonald's game. This guy is who they're saying is ranked higher than me. Some people are saying he could be a top whatever pick. And I think the adjustment coming from the Basketball Africa League, not saying that there's not dogs in the Basketball Africa League, but, when you come here to the United States and they're reading about you, you come with a target on your chest. Yeah. And I felt like Asa, like you said, it was a business trip for him. He set the tone from the elbows to he made a couple jumpers. He just completely took him out of his game. And I was low on Molly Welch after that. I was like, oh, I don't know if he's ready because he's going to be a target every game. He looked a lot better representing South Sudan in the Olympics. And he's had some flashes this year. But for me, and I wanted to ask somebody that was there because I don't think if you saw it on camera, you caught all of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
All right, up next, I want to talk about Kasparas Jakucionis. He is a player that is rising. And I've been practicing his name because I butchered it a couple of times. I even asked one of my Lithuanian friends how to pronounce it. And with his accent, it just threw me off even more. But we're going to talk about Kasparas Jakucionis, who is, again, he's probably one of the hotter prospects. And I want to ask Krysten, why isn't he in Tier 1? Because if you look at his performances compared to Egor's, that could be up for debate. All right, before we get into the last segment, let's talk about FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and get ready to tackle the NFL playoff action with FanDuel. Again, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it is all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more. And it is on the same page where you place your bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, last segment, Kasparas Jakucionis. I've been practicing the name, so I'm trying to say it as much as I can because I think I got it right. What were your thoughts on him coming into the season? I know you probably hadn't had the chance to really watch him, especially considering how much you know the American prospects. So what were your thoughts on him coming into the season, and where are they right now?
I didn't know anything about him, honestly. Like I would have people call me and ask me for local Illinois radio stations, in Champaign, like, oh, come and talk about Will Riley and Kasparas Kasparas Jakucionis. I'm getting it. I'm going to do the same thing. thing. And I was like, I can talk to you about Will Riley because I saw him at Hoop Summit and I've seen him on the EYBL, but I don't know Jakucionis. I don't know his game. And then I knew something was budding because I ran into 2 Illinois assistant coaches and they said, how come you haven't been through yet? This is in October. And I was like, I'm going to make my rounds. Don't worry. I'll get to Illinois at some point. They're like, no, you should have come 2 weeks ago. They're like, Jakucionis he's going to be special. And I'm like, okay, I don't really know anything about him. So I made it a point to watch as much Illinois basketball as possible, which kind of hurts my soul because my ex is from Illinois. He went to Illinois and like
Uh-oh.
he loves that team. So I'm like, I can't believe I'm watching. But Jakucionis is so good. And you're right. He does have that sort of capability, and his output offensively and defensively. He does make a good case for that tier 1. I think the first 2 games that BYU played and we saw, the passing master that Egor is, I'm a little bit higher on him, and he's also 2 inches taller. But watching Jakucionis play, and the fact that his split numbers offensively from 3-point range are ridiculous, shooting over 40% on 5 attempts per game. He loves the step back 3. He can create a shot anywhere, off the dribble, off the pick and roll. He's very patient offensively. And he's just so fun to watch. So you're right. He might be at the very top of this tier 2, but you do make a good case. Like he could be at the bottom of that tier 1.
Did he pop to you on film immediately? Because I've heard some people say that he's grown on them. And
yeah, he was a slow burn. You're right. Yeah.
Okay, I was just making sure because I've seen him. Like I've had a chance to watch him before. He was actually at Basketball Without Borders last All-Star weekend, last February All-Star weekend. He played good, but he didn't pop. I mean, Troy didn't pop in that performance either. Will Riley ended up being MVP, but to me, the best player was Hamed Musa, the freshman at Dayton.
Yes, he was so good. Yeah.
Were you there?
I was there. So I guess I did see Jakucionis, but he did not pop to me. Like
I mean, I've seen you so many places that I don't remember. Maybe I did. Maybe we did. I'm sure we spoke there. Oh, we did speak. We did speak. We saw each other. I remember it was something about the ice or something like that. It was cold or anyway.
Oh, it was so cold. Yeah, that the tweet I said about Indy and the entire Midwest came from my head.
Like, oh yeah, because I retweeted.
It was freezing. It was freezing. I'm sorry, Houston, it was too cold.
And I just saw somebody make a comment about Houston a couple of days ago. Because anyway,
you know what's so funny? I was living in Salt Lake City at the time, and I was like, "This isn't." I didn't like All-Star Weekend in Salt Lake, and I live here, and people are like, leave, we don't want you here, get out of Salt Lake. Like people were mad about that tweet. But yes, that's probably what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Anyways, I do not remember Jakucionis at Basketball Without Borders, but I remember everybody else.
He was there. And so
I know he was there. I don't remember him.
Yeah, I knew he was there just because I actually had someone tell me it was like the very last day, and someone had mentioned that they liked him. And I'm like, I've been here 2 days and he doesn't pop out to me. So yeah, I've had some people tell me like when they first watch him, they see that he struggles getting by guys. He often may pick up his dribble. He doesn't have the blow by speed. And then as time goes on, they watch the decision making, they watch the pace, and they really start to like him. So I just wanted to see if I wasn't out by myself as far as someone that he just didn't pop out immediately. Because to me, when I watch guys, it's almost like a song. Sometimes you know a song in the first 2 seconds, like this song is going on my playlist. And then there's some songs that kind of have to grow on you. Do you think he can get into that top 5 range?
Sure. I mean, I think things are going to change so much between now and June. Like this isn't the Wemby draft. I like I said at the top of the show, I do think it's going to be hard for anyone to overtake what Dylan Harper and Cooper Flagg have done so far this season. But that 3 to 7 range, I mean, is up for grabs, in my opinion.
Yeah, I had an agent tell me that he ranks drafts as you got top 3 and then there's top 10. And he says anything from 4 to 10 is in the eyes of the beholder. And so that's why he said he doesn't like rank guys as I think he can be 5. I think he's top 7 because he said after 3 and in some drafts it's only 2. He's like, it's just in the eyes of the beholder. All right, here's one. You have Liam McNeeley in your tier 2.
We can talk about Liam and Derik kind of the same. I mean, they're Mount Verde teammates. And by the way, I did not have on my draft bingo card Derik Queen being as productive as he's been this early on in the season. And I had a scout tell me like before the season even started, like I was just at Maryland. I was just at practice. Derik Queen looks really good because when we saw him at McDonald's, he was way out of shape. And we saw him at the tail end of the Mount Verde season. he was way out of shape. So I was like, what, really? Now he's cut. He's running the floor well. Like I love his glow up. I love his turnaround, and I love what he's doing for Maryland. Liam is another surprise to me because, he was a McDonald's All-American. He was first committed to Indiana, decommitted. Everyone thought he was going to go to Kansas. And then I think when UConn won back-to-back titles, he kind of pulled the plug and said, no, I want to go play for Hurley and have a chance at a three-peat at UConn. And so I think what he's doing and all the eyeballs that are on UConn, I mean, that what happened in Maui was insane, but that's nothing to discredit what Liam is doing and what he poses as a three-point threat in the NBA. And are there concerns about his lateral quickness defensively? Yes, but those two are ones that and Con Kneppel as well. Like those three freshmen, I'm really watching closely this year to see how they grow and how they battle, just the different games within the games this season.
So I'm gonna need you to sell me on Liam. And I live in Dallas. I've actually seen him for a long time. Like he used to train at this rec center. He's been productive this year. He's averaging 12 points a game, 6 rebounds. I thought he was more so of a guy that's going to be able to play the 3 and 4. And now when I look at him, like in the NBA, he's strictly a 4. But then when I look at the 4s in the NBA, whether it's Siakam, Tatum plays a lot of minutes at the 4. I'm like, who's he going to guard?
Yeah.
I need you to sell me.
I don't think he's a 4. I think he's more of a perimeter player, a 3-point threat. He can be that 3 and D guy, but maybe without the D.
but that means he's going to have to guard if he's on the perimeter, whether it's your Jalen Green. So I just look at when I watch players now, I try to think of like, all right, can this guy play in a playoff setting? And when there are concerns about your lateral quickness, I think you're the guy that teams are going to pick on in the playoffs. And I mean, of course, that could be down the line, or, if he falls outside the lottery, it could be right away. But I just think that he could be a guy that teams haunt on defense. And so to me, he's a little bit out my tier 2. Obviously, it's fluid, but that's why I was saying you might have to sell me on him because the shooting has not, so far, the percentages haven't lived up to the hype and the expectations.
That's fair. And I even said, I said, I want to talk about these 4, and then Liam and Derik are kind of the bottom of the tier 2. And Con, I really like what Con Kneppel at Duke, the freshman there, and what he's doing. So I guess those 3 would be.
Yeah, I think Con has somewhat been a victim of the preseason hype. Like there was a lot of chatter. I admit I fell for it too when all the scouts were saying, "Hey man, he's going to be Duke's leading scorer."
Yeah,
and I mean it's not necessarily been the case. But let's switch to Derik. He was out of shape. Did you see the picture he posted in the McDonald's where he had a gut?
Dude, it was so bad. I'm like, can you guys get him a jersey that fits? Like after practice, his practice jersey, he had to have a teammate come and help him lift it up. I'm like, what is happening? So I did not see that. I'm going to go back and find it. But yeah, I think he's been the biggest surprise to me this draft cycle.
I agree. I've always liked him. But I just thought if he were born or if this was the 2001 draft, he'd be a top 10 pick when the game was a little bit slower and they gave guys the ball on the block and said, go to work. I had concerns how he fit in the modern game. He's lost weight. And I had a scout tell me, he was in terrible shape last year. Then he's only in shape this year. He's like, I think he's going to be really good once he gets in good shape or NBA shape. Yeah. And the same scout I had mentioned on a previous podcast, the same scout mentioned that he wasn't at the game, but he was watching. And he saw that he got poked in the eye and he lifted up his jersey to wipe his eye. And he was like, I wanted to see the gut. I just wanted to see if he had a gut. And he's like, I couldn't see because he wears this long sleeve t-shirt underneath. And the scout is like, is he wearing the long sleeve shirt? Is it strategic? Anyway, long story short, but I also had an agent tell me he doesn't think Queen will be a lottery pick because NBA teams are going to be scared of the optics.
Yeah, the weight game. Yeah, exactly. And what happens if you get hurt? How is the weight gonna pile back on in a Zion Williamson sort of situation?
Yep. Yeah, but no, he's been phenomenal, and I still feel like we haven't seen the best of him yet. He's just starting to hit threes, and he's a much better passer than the assist numbers indicate. All right, well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. This is fun. This has only been our second one, but I'm definitely looking forward to more because Krysten brings some insight that no one else can bring, from visiting practices to the relationships with the players. So this is going to be fun. Again, check out the Locked On newsletter. Go to lockedondaily.com. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe and Krysten Peek, and we are out of here.